Welcome, listeners, to the first inaugural episode of Mark Queppet Speaks, a new series put on by me, your self-mastery coach, Mark Queppet, who is here to help you step beyond your limits and unleash your apex potential. And there's a lot that I want to talk to you guys about today. There's a lot of things that have been on my mind. As you can tell, this is a bit of a different format than what I've been doing lately. There's been a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. In fact, the most recent video you guys saw from me was something I recorded months ago because I knew I had to go kind of buckle down and go into a period of really figuring out myself and what is going to be the next step for this project. And some of the things that I came to were kind of surprising. I had some realizations myself, and one of them is that Universal Man is going to die. So I'm going to be talking about that, but I'm also going to be talking about a new understanding that I have around personal power. And basically it's kind of like the Holy Grail. It's this thing that I've been searching for years, and I think I'm really starting to get a handle on it. Something like when I started my self-development journey when I was 14. I'm about to turn 32 here in a few days. And I've been studying for a long time, and I feel like I've finally gotten a handle on something that's just eluded me. And so I want to kind of get your guys, I want to get you guys in on this and gals in on this, because this is not just about men anymore. Now, there is going to be a place for all the masculine work, and if you want to, you can just look at the timestamp and skip ahead to the announcements if you want. But I would encourage you to maybe hear what I have to say here, because I think it's some interesting stuff. So one of the things that I think we got to start with here is like, what is the purpose of this? Why am I talking to you? Why would you want to listen to me, right? Well, it comes back to what I opened with, is self-mastery and stepping beyond your limits and unleashing your apex potential. And I think most of us, that sounds maybe nice, or maybe it makes you want to throw up. I don't know. There's a lot of people who they can't stand the idea of self-development. They think it's all fake. They think that there's nothing you can do to improve yourself. And the people that put their energy into that kind of stuff are just idiots, right? Or it's just like, shut up and make yourself better and stop talking about it. You don't need anyone's help. And maybe some people function like that, but I don't. I've needed a lot of help. And so I want to, pay it back and whatnot. But the thing that I really want to get in here is that, like, I recognize that we're not at our apex potential. None of us are, for the most part. At least if you're listening to this, you're probably not, okay? And that's okay. You might just be sitting there with a bowl of ice cream with Fritos drizzled on top. Maybe you just got finished a long grind of video games and porn, and you're just looking for that boost to get you to the next level. Or maybe you're someone who's kind of trying really hard. You put a lot of effort into becoming a better person, being the best version of yourself, but you feel like you have to run on all this stress, all this pressure. You feel like you're constantly fighting yourself, right? And I think that this is where people who are self-developmentally minded, they're either in one or two of these camps. They're one or the other. They're either, completely indulgent, feeling like, man, I'm at the bottom. I need to get my shit together. Or they're like, I'm trying so hard to get my shit together, but nothing seems to really click. I feel like I'm always fighting myself and never quite getting to where I want to go. And what's common between both these types of people is that they've got something burning inside of them. They've got something inside of them that says, do more, be more, do better, be better, right? This is that fundamental impulse for evolution, that desire to become something more than what you're currently showing up as, right? And it makes me think, it's kind of a weird analogy to bring it back to, but if you guys ever seen the Grinch cartoon. I don't know much about the Grinch movies that came later, but the original cartoon, right? How the Grinch Stole Christmas. The scene at the end, not to spoil it for you, it's been out for, I don't know, forever. At the end, what happens is, well, he's got the big sleigh full of goodies, and it's teetering on the edge, and it's about to either fall down and everything's going to get destroyed and the Who's don't get their nice things anymore, or the Grinch has to try and save the sleigh, right? And we all know what happens is he pulls on the sleigh and tries to save it, and in that moment his heart grows 3 times and he becomes stronger, right? And it's because he sees a better way of living. He sees a way in which he can actually integrate into the world that's rewarding, that's empowering, that's invigorating. You know, his old shriveled soul, his cynical soul has the opportunity to grow. And what happens when that happens is he becomes super powerful. He easily lifts the sleigh up, and then he goes down and he hands out all the presents, right? And I think the world, strangely enough, is in a very similar situation. Things are teetering on a precipice here, all right? Like, we have so much potential as a species. We have more potential than we've ever had. Technology, information, knowledge, awareness, all of these things are exploding. But a lot of things are imploding. A lot of things are actually horrifying. There's civil liberties are being destroyed. Everything is crazy in terms of politics. People have never been, in some ways, more divided, or at least not more divided en masse and consciously fighting with each other back and forth via Twitter all the time. I mean, I guess technically there's less overt warfare probably than other periods of time in history, but like culturally, we're right on the edge, and like we're at that point where that sleigh, all our good things, I think they could fall off. I think they could actually go away unless we step up. We have to go to the next level. We have to become better people. And I'm not talking just about the people in power. That's what a lot of people want to do. They just want to put it all on the people at the top. It's their fault. But when they're saying that, if they're saying it's their fault, then they're also saying it's theirs to solve, right? They have the power to fix it. But I don't think we can wait for that. I think we as the common people, we need to evolve. And that's what I'm obsessed with. I'm obsessed with figuring out not only how can I move up to this next level, but how can I help everybody come with me? And how can I inspire them to bring everybody around them up, right? Because at the end of the day, like if you're not trying to save the world, then I guess my content isn't really for you, because this is what I'm all about. This is what I'm all about. Like I've been this since I was a little kid, all right? And the thing that I think is tricky is that there's no obvious heroic moment for most of us. Like we're talking about that Grinch movie. There is a clear, obvious moment where it's like step up or lose everything, right? And most of us like to think like, oh, if, I was involved in, like, if there was a terrorist trying to shoot people around me, I'd whip out my 9 and I'd put him down. Or, if there was someone who was racist in front of me, I would tell him off. And like, it's like we imagine these dramatic scenarios where like, oh, I would be the hero there. And then sometimes we even go so far as to manufacture such moments on social media to make it look like we are that kind of person. But really, that kind of stuff is very rare. Usually there's no one really around telling you hey, this is your chance to step up. This is your chance to grow. And because of that, because there's no defining moment like that is immediately obvious, your heart doesn't grow 3 sizes. You don't get the superpowers. Right? And so figuring out how to access that power, that's the key. That's the thing that I've been so hooked on, because I want that. We all know it. It's like it's woven into all of our stories that if you're put into that moment and you have the right character inside of you, which I think most people do, then you will gain access to a tremendous amount of heroic power, right? And we all want that. We see our lives need a hero. Well, how do you get the hero power? Well, that's what I want to talk about here today. I want to tell you a little bit about my journey, because I think I'm onto something with this. So when I was young, all right, I was a very, I don't know what to describe it. I was a little alpha, okay? Like I just wanted to be in charge. I came into every like room wearing my full superhero regalia. I would like do like a combat roll into rooms and just start pretending to shoot bad guys. I was aggressive. I like loved superheroes. I was very competitive, very confident in myself. And sometimes I was a bit of a bully just because I was so aggressive. And sometimes I was a bit of a bully because I was a bit of a shit too. But it was like, that's who I was, okay? And this continued up until puberty And like at that point, I was a pretty cool dude. Back in middle school, I was a 7th grader dating 8th graders, and I was good at sports and all this kind of stuff. But eventually, I started to go backwards. And around that time, I think one of the big contributing factors was that I started using pornography and masturbating a lot. And I think that screwed up my brain. I think I was heavily addicted to video games. But more than that, socially, is I started to experience rejections, particularly for the way that I showed up. My aggressiveness, it didn't always serve me well. I was very physically aggressive. I would like hit people, and I would get into fights and things like that. And I would bully, like I said, I would bully people sometimes. And it started coming back to me. People didn't like me. People would put me down. People would reject me. And this got to me because while I was, very assertive in many ways, I was also very sensitive. And especially when like my success with girls stopped being, so high, I started to go inward in myself. I started to retreat into myself. I started to retreat into my thoughts. And there was other stuff going on in my family and my life and whatnot that caused me to become much more self-conscious. And it put me in a state where I felt like I needed to constantly improve myself. I needed to withdraw from the world, figure things out so that I could feel safe enough, and then I could like go back and face reality, right? I felt like I needed to constantly retreat from my life, hide in my little comfort zone and try and build up power. But the problem was like, it didn't really work, right? Like the more I retreated, the weaker I became. And ultimately what ended up happening was that I just would escape a lot, like most of my life. And I did the things that I had to do because I was afraid to not do them. I did school because I was afraid of getting in trouble. And, I would, force myself to socialize because I was afraid of being completely rejected. But it always came from like this place of like, I need to put on a mask because I'm not safe in the world. I'm not good enough. That's the general underlying thing that sat with me through much of my teens and college. And people who knew me, they probably wouldn't have been able to see that necessarily because a lot of times I did carry myself confidently, and I wasn't like a total social recluse, and I still was okay in some regard, but like this feeling of not good enough, this feeling of needing to constantly construct a more elaborate mask, forged out of self-development principles and perfection and, just different kinds of artifice, essentially. I always felt like I needed to have that and improve it because I was never quite safe enough. And there is a way out of this because like this is never really going to get you where you want to go. Because at the end of the day, what you want is to be authentic, okay? That's what you want. Like if we're going to break down the two motivational systems people have access to, and I've talked about this before, but I think it bears repeating, is that you can either be operating from a vacuous place or a radiant place. A vacuous place says, I'm inherently bad. Like I don't have any goodness inside of me inherently as a person. And what I need to do is I need to earn my goodness. I need to get good. I need to earn good boy points by, being popular, being attractive, getting sexually validated, by making money, by being fit, by doing all these other kinds of things, right? And if I don't do those things, then I suck. Bottom line. And so you're kind of like this black hole and you're constantly looking for stuff to stuff inside of you. And you build up all this ornamentation around you, and that becomes the mask. And you're like, I feel safe inside this cocooned mask of status, right? That's a vacuous way of living. And I think most people live that way, and you can drive yourself like that, but it's the driving of a slaver, right? And what we want to do, obviously, well, maybe not obviously, is we want to shift that. We want to be coming from a place of inherent dignity. Okay, we want to be coming from a place where I am good. I am inherently good. And because I am good, I'm going to then reflect that goodness in my status, right? I'm going to reflect it in the way that I show up in the world. And so making this shift, like I sensed this on some level, and that was the journey that I really started in college. And it took a big turn when I started to quit porn. Okay. And this is something that I think most people need to do. You want to start walking this path of higher power, higher energy, is you need to recondition your emotional system. Okay, you need to cut out your worst escapes. You need to get some self-care and discipline. You need to clear up your dopaminergic habits. Like you can't just be, surfing crap all day and downing sweets and doing stuff like that and feel like your best. You need to at least start cleaning it up somewhat. And this is what I did, right? I did this. And I got some success. My life got way better. I quit porn. I started my own business. I helped other guys quit porn. I started to branch out into other forms of self-development and whatnot. And some of you have been following me this whole time. You've been following me for 8 years or 9 years, whatever the heck it is now. And you saw it. So I started a sacred sexuality project, and then I teamed up with NoFap, and I was their head coach for a period of time, and I ran the NoFap Academy. And then I was Universal Man, and I've gone through different iterations of doing that kind of stuff. There was a brief stint with a full-on immersion in Commander Q. And so you saw all this stuff happen, but really what was going on with all of that? While I was becoming more authentic, I was still always behind a mask. Because you notice there was always a name of a project there. I always felt like I needed some kind of thing in front of me. Because if I just showed up as myself, Mark Queppet, who would want that? Who would want that, right? Maybe no one, right? We'll see. We'll see how this goes, because that's kind of where I'm taking this here. But the point here is that none of these kind of masks in your life, and you're going to have them in some form or another. Maybe you're just the funny guy at work, or maybe you're trying to hide behind your little niche career, or maybe you're just like, I'm the gamer, or I have this style, or I have this religion, or I have something that I put in front of me that seems like a personality, that seems like an identity, but it's really just something else that you're holding up in front of you, right? And this can be anything. It can be, the pursuit of a perfect career, the perfect physique, the perfect woman, the car, the clothes, the friends, the perfect, maybe it's the video game. And you're not going to find yourself in any of these things. You might find things about yourself in the pursuit of these, but you're not going to find who you really are, okay? And the bottom line here is that your power is your authentic expression. All right, so if we go back to this radiant versus vacuous mentality here, the vacuous mentality, really what that's about is stimulatory possession. What you're trying to do when you're operating from a vacuous place, when you don't believe you have inherent dignity, is that you're trying to acquire things that provide you with some level of stimulation. Okay, so it's like you're chasing that social affirmation, the sexual affirmation. Maybe you're chasing like the body, the whatever. I listed all the things. Like you're chasing something that's going to give you a little high. Okay, and you're just trying to get. You're like a black hole, right? But that's not going to power you in the way that you want to be powered. Yes, it will give you power, but you're not going to like living that way. And many of you probably are living that way. And it can be so subtle, because I thought I was, so radiant. I was like, I'm helping guys quit porn. I'm helping people do this. I'm being successful. I'm being true to myself. And like I was, to the extent that I was self-aware. But I'm realizing it goes deeper than this, because you don't want to be like stimulatory possession is such a subtle thing. You can become so hooked into it without even realizing it. But what we want to do is we want to flip that, okay? The key is authentic expression, all right? It's about being yourself, being you. And this is probably one of the most simple yet difficult to understand concepts that I've come across. Like the moral of how many stories is, you just got to be yourself. You just got to be true to you. It's like something we all know, but it's so simple that we almost can't wrap our brains around what it practically means in our lives. And I think if we take it to an extreme, the two ways in which people struggle with this the most is that they think being true to yourself means hedonism, where it's just like, I'm going to be true to just this one part of myself, particularly my impulses, my appetites. I'm going to become a slave to my emotions. That's what hedonism is. And obviously that sucks. If you just do what feels good in the moment, that's going to cause you big problems. But we see a large portion of the population, this is the way that they operate, okay? But I don't think I need to explain to you why this isn't a good strategy, okay? But then we have the other side of this, and this is where I think a lot of us get stuck, and this is where I know I get stuck. And by us, I mean the self-developmentally minded people. And this is, on the polar end of hedonism is what I would call Stoicism, okay? And many people are huge fans of the Stoic philosophy. And I think it's less obvious what the issues are for here. But I think really, like, Stoicism is about the pursuit of being in order with your rationality. It really kind of puts your highest conception of goodness on an intellectual level, kind of as your God, and your job is to kind of do that. You're not supposed to get too up, too down. You're just supposed to submit to your goodness, okay? And the idea is that if you do that, well, then you're going to get the best things. But I think that this needs more explanation, and the typical way in which it is explored doesn't actually get you somewhere where you want to go, because it doesn't give you drive, all right? You can acknowledge something rationally as good, but that doesn't make you necessarily want it, right? It doesn't. And people who practice Stoicism, they would agree with that. And they say, that's why you need to be disciplined. You need to be trained. You need to condition yourself. And like, yes, but that's when something else starts to happen there. If you're really successful in that process, there's something else that goes on before your emotions really get plugged in, okay? And so between hedonism and Stoicism is what I would call Protagonism, okay? We could call this the philosophy that I've been constructing for a long time without even being aware of it, okay? And what is Protagonism? All right, it's basically the idea of living from a place of authentic expression. It's the fundamental assumption is that you are at your core good, and then the further assumption is that to the extent to which your faculties are harmoniously aligned, they are good as well. And the goal is to find the intersect between your intellect and your instinct, between your rationality and your emotionality. It's about finding the place right there where both of them line up, where it's like that sounds good rationally, and that also is emotionally compelling. In other words, it's like if you are going to look at your life as a big story, it's like, what character do you want to play? That's what it is. And if you really think about that and you really let that be your modus operandi, I think I'm using that term right, your main objective, then really cool things start to happen, okay? Because what ends up happening is that your whole source of power, your whole source of drive is to just be the most real you. And what's really cool about this is that you can't run out of you. You have an infinite supply of you-ness in here. This, people always talk about, oh, you got to be in an abundant mindset, man. It's like, well, where are you getting the abundance from? Where is it coming from? Where do you get your infinite supply of power from? Well, it comes from you. And you need to be able to think like that. You need to be able to see, all right, how does the ideal me show up in this specific situation? What's the most interesting character that is compelling to me rationally and emotionally in this scenario? And when you can find that, well, then you have power. And you can look for that in every scenario. And so it's abundant. You're not going to run out of that. But also it's extreme ownership, because it doesn't require anything else to be controlled. It just requires you to control yourself in the scene of your life, right? Now, this may not be completely new to people. I mean, it's a pretty standard mindset idea. Be the hero of your own life. Don't be an NPC, right? Well, there's problems, there's challenges, there's always challenges, right? So the challenge in trying to do this is that different parts of your brain will disagree, right? Sometimes your rationality wants to go this way and your emotionality wants to go that way. Sometimes you don't know what to do. Sometimes you're completely in the dark, right? And so it's in this scenario, which happens pretty much all the time, this is where people break down, where they either have conflict inside of them or they simply don't know what they're supposed to be doing. Now, here's where I think there's some opportunity for learning, even for many of you who are further along this self-development journey, is that you have to find, if you can't find it right away, you have to create that intersect. Okay? You have to create that intersect between rationality and emotionality. And what that means is that you have to step into the unknown, because it's not in the sphere of the known. Like if you're in a scenario and I say, all right, find the course of action that both rationally sounds good and emotionally sounds good to you, and you see it right away, well then great, you can do it, but that path exists in the realm of the known. But if I ask you to do that and you say, I don't know what I should do, well then, what do we have to do? Most people, they just give up. They just walk away. It's like, I just have to live in conflict, or I have to, basically just feel stuck. And you don't, but you have to do something else. And this is where you have to enter into what I'm calling liminal space. I guess other people call it liminal space as well. Liminal means like you're on a threshold. You're in a boundary state. And this is actually a psychological state, okay? Wikipedia defines it as liminality as the quality of ambiguity or disorientation that occurs in the middle stage of a rite of passage, when a participant no longer holds their pre-ritual status, but has not yet begun to transition into the status they will hold when the rite is complete. During the rite's liminal stage, participants stand at the threshold between their previous way of structuring their identity, time, or community, and a new way, which completing the rite establishes. Okay. And this is definition that comes from the context of actual rites of initiation. But my point here is that these initiatory moments can exist at all times. Any time that you want to look for the intersect between instinct and intellect, and you step into the unknown to find it, you are entering into you could think of it as a ritualistic space, a psychological space where you have the capacity to unlock another tier of your identity. But doing this is not easy. It requires you to go on an adventure. This is why I call this protagonism, because it's like you have to start, follow the hero's journey. All right, you have to step into this, cross the threshold, and step into this space. This is where the new tentative tagline for my work, Step Beyond, comes from. Okay, it's like you have to be willing to do this, but you also have to know how to do it. It's a skill. It's a skill to be able to step into liminal space. Okay, it's like, think of it as accessing the nexus of causality. All right, some of you guys have heard my causality matrix idea. It's like the idea of infinite possibilities. We got like the past and the future in front of us, and we can choose different pathways through reality. Right? And so this liminal space is opening your mind up to that world and allowing yourself to see your potential. Okay? It's like stepping into this weird alternate dimension where there's like a big hallway with, infinite numbers of doors, and behind each door is a different option of a path that you can go. And that's step one. If we want to get our Grinch superpower, lift the sleigh kind of stuff, we have to be able to enter into this liminal space on command. In fact, we got to be able to start doing it reflexively, to the point where it's like we are always looking for that intersect, and when we don't see it, we're already stepping into that space to go find it. Okay? Now, when we enter into this state, it is stressful. It takes energy from your system, and most people avoid it. Okay, they default to their autopilot reaction. They say, I don't know what's most authentic here. I don't know how to express myself in a way that is both rationally compelling and emotionally compelling. So I'm just going to default to one or the other. And so either they repress their emotionality and just listen to their rational good boy voice, or they repress their rationality and they just listen to their emotional impulse. And probably more people do the latter one, and they say, it's like, it's that time of day I said I was going to work on this project, but all of a sudden I'm feeling confused about the project, and so I'm just going to jerk off. Right? Now, this isn't always what happens. I'm sure you've had periods of your life where you felt on fire. You felt like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm so excited to be doing it. I'm trying to figure it out. Like maybe you're playing a new video game that you love, and you're not quite good at it yet, or you're stuck in it, but you feel still very compelled and driven. Okay? Or maybe you're just working on a new avenue in your life and you feel like you're on an adventure, right? The difference between these is just really your optimism versus your pessimism about the path that you're on. And the more optimistic you are, the more dopamine you get, the more feel-good chemicals you get entering into this liminal space. The less optimistic you are, the more worried you are, the more that your brain just releases cortisol. And that's the stress hormone. But either way, your brain gives you energy when you enter into this space. And that's very important to understand. Is like, if you want power, you got to step beyond your limits. You got to step over that threshold, step into the unknown, and begin searching for the thing that you do not currently have. Okay? That's key. But your body will respond. Some people will feel it as anxiety if what they're dealing with is kind of stressful and scary. Other people will feel it as a wave of excitement. Very often you'll feel it as a combination of both of these things. When you enter into this liminal space, it's like, I don't know what the best thing for me is. I don't know what the most authentic path is, but I'm looking for it. The way you go about it then is tracking what I call the golden resonance. Okay. You've heard me talk about that before. It's kind of like that feeling. It's that sense of intuition where it's like, that feels cool over there. Or that seems neat. It's like the pre-formation of an actual opinion. Okay. And another way of thinking this is like, if we're going to put it into protagonism terms, it's like following the main quest marker. Because that's really what this is about. It's like following the main quest of your life, living on the front lines of your life. You can sense it. If you're willing to step over that threshold into the next area, into the unknown, well, there's going to be something there. If you sit in it long enough, you're going to be able to find something that gives you some orientation as to where you should head. And the more guidance that you have, the better guidance you have, the more easily that you're going to find that. But in practical sense, it means that you enter into that hallway of 1,000, or infinite doors, and you start opening them up. You start thinking, well, what are my options? What are my possibilities? You start asking questions, okay? And if you open up enough of those doors, eventually you're going to open one where you look inside of it, and maybe you see something off in the distance there, and you're like, ooh, I think I like that, right? You get an idea. You get a vision that starts to compel you. It starts to energize you. It starts to give you some power. And this is what we need, right? We need to find that vision. We need to find that person that you want to be. But we have to be careful about it. We have to be intelligent about it, because what often happens is that people open all the doors. They let their mind run wild. They think big, right? All the motivational people say, think big, think more about your life, think high, blah, blah, blah. And that's great. You need that. You're going to get this big spike of energy. But if you don't set yourself up properly, you're just going to immediately fall off. You're going to get real inspired, build your vision board, and then not do a fucking thing. Right? How many of us have done that? We've gotten real revved up only to have nothing change. And I think part of the reason that happens is because we don't have the appropriate power level. All right? We're going to put things in Dragon Ball Z terminology, is that you need to raise your power level. Okay? You can't just go from 0 to 100. It's like if you're in the beginning stages of a video game and you're armed with a stick and you're fighting little bugs at like a level 1, okay? You can't take on the big end game dragon yet. You can't get all that juicy loot and stuff. You can't do it yet. You're just not equipped for it, right? And why is that? What does that really mean? What does it mean to be at a lower level in self-development? And what I would define this as is that you're in a state of incongruence. So think about it like this. If we say that your power already exists inside of you, it exists in your dignity, it exists in your inherent goodness, it exists in that divine spark of your life, okay? It's all right there. You already have it, okay? Why can't you just summon all of it and just rise to the top like that? Well, I think it's because it's of incongruence, okay? The more your character is split between different narratives that are not harmonious, the less power you have. So think about it like this, okay? If 1 minute you're looking to be some world-changing superhero, but the next minute you're furiously beating your meat to some degenerate pornography, okay? There's an incongruence there, right? Right? I mean, if 1 moment you are championing peace and harmony, but in the next moment you're shouting horrible insults over Twitter to your political opponent, there's an incongruence there, right? And this is the big thing that we deal with, right? The goal is not to become more powerful. It's about removing the things that steal our power, the things that create conflict and take the potential that we have and dilutes it. It's like if we have a garden hose, okay, and we want to create a really strong stream of power, but we punch a bunch of different holes into that garden hose, well, what's going to happen? It's going to be a weak stream because the energy is diffused, right? And this is how most of us live. We live as constant hypocrites, as constant paradoxes. And so really, your greatest opportunities for power right now, they exist where you're most consistently out of character, meaning the places in your life where you show up as a person that you're not really proud of being, that's stealing your power. That's keeping you at a lower level and preventing you from leveling up, okay? And it's scary to try and confront that stuff. So it's like, oh, you got a bad habit, okay? Well, you got to figure out how to fix it. Do you know how to fix it? No, or you probably would have already. Just being honest, right? So when you think about it, it's like, shit, I got to make that better. And then all of a sudden you're faced with that threshold. It's like, do you step into the unknown? Do you step into the state of acknowledging that you don't know what's going to happen? You don't know how to make this happen. You have to go on an adventure. You have to go on a journey. Are you going to do it? I don't know. There's a whole bunch of cortisol flooding through your system right now. And the idea of just, settling back down into your comfort zone sounds mighty enticing, right? And so this is where we need to have that bravery. We need to move forward, right? And so one of the keys that I found for helping myself do this is gratitude. And disclaimer, I've hated gratitude. Like, it's a big concept in the self-development community. It's like, oh, you just got to get your gratitude journal every morning. Every morning, listen, I take out my journal and I write down 3 things I'm grateful for. And it just like made me want to vomit. It's like, I don't want to be grateful. I want the shit that I want and I don't have it yet. So why the fuck am I going to be grateful? Right? Right? That's the way I always felt. I always felt like I don't want to be grateful. I want to be hungry. I want to be driven. And realistically, that stuff was a vacuous mentality. Okay. But what I realize now, what gratitude really is the keys to becoming your authentic self. It's a tool. It's a tool that lets you play the game properly. So let me put it to you like this. Okay. Imagine you're watching a play and an actor comes on stage and they start to do their lines, but then midway through it, they're like, what? Can you fix the lighting, please? Or they start like yelling at the stagehands for like, excuse me, you didn't put my chair where it's supposed to go. It's like they break character and they just start complaining about shit. Okay. What's that going to do? Well, it's going to ruin the integrity of their performance. It's going to create a compromise. It's going to create incongruity. On one hand, they're trying to play this role, but on the other hand, they're completely breaking character, and it ruins it not only for them, but also ruins it for everybody else as well, right? Same thing if like, you see someone who's in an improv comedy group, okay? If someone shouts out, an idea from the audience, or, one of their troupe members, they tell a joke and that person and you just get mad at them, it's like, that's going to break the whole flow of it. So they start berating someone for their suggestion or saying, excuse me, that joke is insensitive, that is not allowed, blah, blah, blah. It's like, they've ruined it, right? The key here is to look at everything, moment to moment, as a scene. Embrace all of it, right? The best actor, he's going to be able to walk on a stage no matter how it's managed, and he's going to be able to kill it. He's going to be able to work with even the imperfections and make them better. That's why I like the improv example. It's like they can take bad examples, they can take bad jokes and make them even better. They embrace them. And so what's the carryover here? So if you're going to apply this to your real life, it's learning how to look at particularly the hardships, because that's what the tricky part is, looking at the hardships as opportunities for you to communicate what kind of character you are. They are tools for your expression. You think about it, it's like if I'm struggling with something, say I have a business setback, say I have a business failure, okay? That is an excellent point in the story of my character for me to say, all right, who am I really? What kind of character am I? What role am I going to play? Am I going to play the role of the guy who breaks down and cries and whines and gives up? I can play that character. It'd be easy to play that character. Well, at least right then. The subsequent life would not be satisfying, right? Or I could choose to be the guy who, decides to muscle through and persevere and push himself and never give up. I could do that. Or I could maybe even take it a higher level. I could be the guy who laughs at it, embraces it, says thank you to the universe, and looks for the opportunity for his growth point. He thinks, how can my character expand and become more powerful here? It's like every negative circumstance becomes like, this is why I love video games. It's like video games I feel like are trying like a mass psychological like artifact of like the collective unconscious that's trying to teach us something. It's like the best loot comes from the biggest monsters, right? Right? And so it's like learning how to look at the problems in your life as monsters with loot. They are things that you can embrace, right? If you're playing a video game, you're trying to get good loot, you don't hide from the strong monsters, you hunt them down. You pursue them. You embrace them. When you find one, you're like, yes, found the one I'm looking for. I got a chance of getting to that next level now. And that's how you want to be looking at the hardships in your life. You accept them as set pieces that you can use to create your own authentic performance around. You find in the scene of that problem, you say, what's the way I can show up that is both rationally accurate and good, rationally sound, but then emotionally compelling. It makes me excited to be that person, right? This is the key. And when you can embrace this is when you have control over your heart growing 3 sizes and gaining power, but it's not a one-time event. It's a perpetual event that you can tap into constantly, right? And this is where a lot of my personal changes have come from recently. So what does this mean then? What does this mean for where things are going? Well, basically, I'm going to be retiring Universal Man, kind of slowly because I need to figure out all the technical end of managing the Vanguard and that sort of thing. But the reason is because, firstly, most importantly, is that I don't want to hide behind a name that is not mine anymore. You know, I have kind of a weird name, Mark Queppet, right? It's kind of a strange name. For a long time, like, you know, I thought, man, I'm just kind of screwed with this one. Like, no one's gonna be able to remember that, whatever. And who knows, maybe they won't, but I'm gonna do my best to make people, because that is my name. It's my character. I don't need to construct another character to become. I can just be me, right? And so moving forward on my social platforms and stuff like this, I'm going to be operating just as Mark Queppet, all right? And I'm going to be hosting most of my self-development content, Mark Queppet, right? Easy, simple. A lot of people do personal branding. Not a big deal for most people. It was a big deal for me because I never felt I could do that. I never felt like I could be confident enough to just own that. And most of my stuff in the self-mastery sphere will be falling into the Mark Queppet metaverse, as I'll be referring to it. And that'll be great. That'll be exciting. What's cool is that this stuff will be open to everyone. It's not going to be just for men anymore, because I think there's a lot of women who can benefit from this stuff as well and who are actually interested in this stuff. And I want to be able to work with them. Okay, and the stuff I'm going to be doing under the Mark Queppet brand or name or whatever, it's not going to be focused specifically at men. But there is a very important part of my work that is focused on men, and it is focused particularly around helping guys quit porn, right? And so that's going to be peeled off into Reforged Man. Okay, and Reforged Man's a name that I already use. That's the name of my porn recovery course. And I think that'll be useful in a number of ways. It'll be more streamlined, be able to kind of contain it, because that kind of community needs special kinds of considerations, because people are really touchy about privacy and all that kind of stuff. And additionally, Universal Man sounds kind of new agey to a lot of Christians, and a lot of Christians are probably the people who will be wanting what I offer. Not all, but some of them. And having something that immediately makes them balk is not useful. And so that's kind of the branding breakdown, but there's more to this. It's like my previous video on embracing constraints. A lot of you guys really liked that. And so what I'm going to be doing each week is this Mark Queppet Speaks podcast. And basically, I'm going to give myself a certain number of hours per week that I can work on this podcast. And whatever I get is what I get, right? I'm going to speak from the heart. I'm going to speak from, in a much more personal manner, not trying to be so detached as this high-level teacher who says, here's how it is. This is the way you do it, blah, 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 blah. I've done a lot of those videos. I can do that. And I'm going to continue to do that, particularly in polished products. But it's very difficult to produce that kind of work, and I need to manage my energy better, because there's just a lot that's asked of me if I'm going to achieve the vision that is compelling to me. And so I'm getting more help. I'm hiring people. I'm doing all kinds of stuff. I'm probably going to be experimenting with some short form content as well, just to see if I can capture some viral traffic as well. So there's just a lot of changes that are going to be coming. But the biggest thing is that I want to be me, and I want you to be you, and I want it to be the truest of me and the truest of you. And I think that is the most powerful that we can have, like the most power that we can have. And this movement, well, I'm going to claim it as a movement. It hasn't really started yet, but it's starting right now, I guess. I think that this can really change things. I think this can change the way the self-development sphere operates, and that's actually one of my biggest goals. So let me know what you think of this. I don't really know what to expect. Hopefully you found something interesting and useful in what I was going to say. I know it was kind of a bit of a long spiel, but it all sounded compelling to me. So let me know your thoughts, and we'll keep things rolling along, and I'll see you guys next week, and I'll probably change and shift on a bunch of other things, but I'm excited. I'm on an adventure. I'm in the liminal space, and I am on fire. Frankly, I'm very, very excited for this, and I want you to be very, very excited about your life as well. I don't want it to feel terrifying. I don't want it to feel overwhelming, and so I think the more that we team up, the less frightening it needs to be, and the faster it can be. I think the speed that you can operate when you are tapping into both instinct and intellect is insane. It's insane, and that's kind of what I want to be talking about moving forward. So that's what I have for you guys. I'll see you all on the next one. Ooh, yeah.